The prisoner transport hummed through the crystalline corridors of Vareth Prime's diplomatic compound, its energy restraints casting pale blue shadows across Kalen Ward's weathered face. At 33, he carried the weight of 20 years of interstellar war in the lines around his eyes, though his lips still held the ghost of a sardonic smile that had somehow survived every battle, every loss, every betrayal. The Drunari guards flanking him moved with mechanical precision, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks that revealed only their distinctive violet eyes. They didn't speak. They never did when escorting human prisoners. To them, Kalen was just another piece of war debris to be processed, cataloged, and likely executed once the diplomatic theater concluded. The transport glided to a stop before a towering door carved from what looked like frozen starlight as it dissolved into shimmering particles. Kalen caught his first glimpse of the negotiation chamber. The room was a study in alien aesthetics, with walls that seemed to breathe and a ceiling that displayed a real-time view of Vareth Prime's 3 moons dancing through perpetual twilight. He was pushed forward, the energy restraints adjusting automatically to allow walking but prevent any sudden movements. The council table dominated the center of the room, a single piece of organic crystal that had supposedly been growing for 10,000 years. 5 figures already sat waiting, their forms obscured by the formal robes of Vareth's ruling elite. Then the secondary door opened, and time seemed to fracture. She entered with the fluid grace of a trained warrior, her movements betraying years of combat experience despite the diplomatic attire she wore. The deep purple of her skin caught the ambient light in ways that human eyes found hypnotic, and her silver hair was braided in the complex pattern that marked her as nobility. But it was her eyes that made Kalen's breath catch in his throat. Those impossibly green eyes, like earth forests he'd never see again, widened in recognition that mirrored his own shock. Serenya Cathar. The name hit him like a pulse rifle to the chest, dragging with it a flood of memories from 5 years ago, before the war had turned from cold to hot, before the killing fields of Proxima, before everything went to hell. A diplomatic mixer on the neutral station of Haven's Rest, a blind group date arranged by well-meaning friends trying to promote interspecies understanding, 6 beings from different worlds, awkwardly attempting small talk over synthetically approximated cuisine. He remembered how she'd held her fork like a weapon, suspiciously eyeing the pasta he'd ordered for the table, the way she'd jumped when he'd laughed, not understanding human humor, how she'd tried to analyze the molecular structure of red wine before taking a sip, then made a face that transcended species barriers in its expression of disgust. And now here she stood, no longer the curious xenobiology student exploring human culture, but Princess Serenya Cathar, daughter of the late Supreme Commander, one of the most powerful figures in the Drunari hierarchy. The moment stretched between them, taut as a garrote wire. The other council members shifted uncomfortably, sensing something but not understanding what. In Drunari culture, showing emotion was not just weakness, it was heresy. Yet for 3 heartbeats, Serenya stood frozen in the doorway, her perfect composure cracked by something that looked dangerously close to human surprise. She recovered first, gliding to her seat with renewed poise, but Kalen had seen it, that fracture in her mask, that flash of something real beneath the trained diplomat. "The prisoner will state his designation for the record," one of the council members intoned, their voice filtered through a translation matrix that stripped it of all inflection. "Kalen Ward," he replied, his own voice steadier than he felt. "Former captain, 3rd Battalion, Earth Defense Coalition, current designation spy, saboteur, and apparently dinner guest." A ripple of disapproval passed through the council at his flippancy, but Serenya's hand twitched. Just slightly. He knew that gesture. She was fighting not to smile. Even after 5 years, even after everything, some part of her still found him amusing. "You were captured attempting to infiltrate a classified facility on Vareth 7, another council member stated. "The penalty for espionage during ceasefire is death." Do you dispute these facts? I dispute the word captured, Kalen said, allowing himself a slight grin. I prefer temporarily detained. It sounds more optimistic. The lead counselor's mask turned toward Serenia. Princess Cathar, you will conduct the preliminary interrogation. The council wishes to observe your methods before we proceed to formal sentencing. Serenia rose smoothly. Every inch the warrior diplomat, as the council commands. Her voice was different now, layered with harmonics that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Some kind of enhancement, probably. The Drunari were always modifying themselves, trying to become more perfect, more controlled. She circled the table, approaching him with measured steps, this close. He could see the faint scars along her neck, battle marks that hadn't been there before. The war had changed them both. Kalen Ward, she said, and hearing his name in her voice again was like touching a live wire. You will answer my questions truthfully, or face the consequences. Serenia, he replied softly, too low for the others to hear clearly. It's been a while. Her pupils dilated slightly, an involuntary response her training couldn't quite suppress. Princess Cathar, she corrected louder. You will address me properly. Prisoner. Of course, Princess, he said, adding just enough emphasis to make it clear he remembered exactly who she'd been before the title. My apologies, the last time we met, you were just Serenia, xenobiology student with a grant to study human social customs. How'd that thesis work out? By the way, comparative analysis of mating rituals across species. I remember you taking very detailed notes during that dinner. One of the council members started to speak, but Serenia raised her hand slightly, silencing them. The prisoner references a cover identity from a previous intelligence-gathering mission. It has no bearing on current proceedings. Intelligence gathering, Kalen laughed, the sound echoing off the breathing walls. Is that what we're calling it now? Because I distinctly remember you trying to figure out if holding hands was a form of combat. You grabbed mine so hard you nearly broke 3 fingers. Silence, she commanded, but her voice wavered slightly on the word. The lead counselor leaned forward. Princess, if you have prior contact with this prisoner that compromises your objectivity, you must declare it immediately. Serenia straightened, her composure reforming like armor. 5 years ago, I participated in an authorized cultural exchange program. This human was present at one gathering. The interaction was minimal and irrelevant. Minimal, Kalen repeated, tasting the word. Right. That's why you kept the napkin with the chemical formula for chocolate I drew for you. Very minimal. Her hand moved instinctively toward her belt before she caught herself. But Kalen had seen it. The small pouch where she'd always kept interesting specimens. She still had it. After 5 years and a war that had killed millions, she still carried the same specimen pouch. The prisoner will explain his presence on Vareth 7, she said, her voice forcibly steadied. I was sightseeing, Kalen replied. I heard the acid oceans are lovely this time of year. You were 30 levels underground in a maximum security archive. I have a very thorough approach to tourism. She moved closer, close enough that he could smell the faint ozone scent that all Drunari carried, like lightning about to strike. What were you looking for? The truth, he said simply. And for the first time since entering the room, his voice carried no humor. The truth about what? He met her eyes, those impossible green depths that had once looked at him with such curiosity, such wonder at the simple human things he'd shared. Pizza, laughter, the concept that touching could mean affection instead of aggression. About what really happened at Colony 7. About why 30,000 human civilians died when your father promised them safe passage, about the betrayal that started this war. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Several council members rose from their seats, hands moving to weapons. But Serenia remained still, a statue carved from purple stone and contained violence. My father died protecting this empire, she said, each word precise as a blade thrust. He would never break his word. Your father was murdered, Kalen said quietly, but not by humans. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the walls seemed to stop breathing. Serenya's perfect control finally cracked, her eyes widening with something between rage and confusion. "How dare you?" "I can prove it," he interrupted. "That's why I was in the archive. That's why I let myself get caught. Because someone needed to tell you the truth, and apparently that someone is the idiot human who once spent 3 hours explaining to you why humans kiss." She struck him. The blow came so fast the energy restraints didn't even have time to react. His head snapped to the side, copper flooding his mouth, but he smiled through the blood, because in that moment of violence, he'd seen something crucial. A single tear track on her purple cheek. Drunari didn't cry. It was biologically impossible for them. Their tear ducts sealed at birth as part of their emotional conditioning, unless... "Your modifications are failing," he said softly, wonder in his voice. "You're becoming..." "Remove the prisoner," Serenya commanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "The interrogation is postponed pending council review." The guards moved forward, but Kalen spoke quickly, knowing this might be his only chance. "Check your father's private communications from stardate 4127.3. The encryption key is Serenya's first snow. He told me you'd understand what that meant." She went completely still. The council members were speaking, voices raised in confusion and demands, but she seemed to hear none of it. Her eyes were locked on his, searching for deception and finding none. "How could you possibly know that?" she whispered. "Because I was there," he replied as the guards pulled him backward. "I was with him when he died. His real death, not the lie they told you." The doors sealed between them, but not before he saw her sink into her chair. One hand pressed to her mouth in a gesture so human it made his chest ache. The last thing he heard was the lead counselor demanding answers and Serenya's voice, steady despite everything, saying she needed time to review the prisoner's claims. They dragged him through corridors that all looked the same, crystalline and cold and perfect in that awful Drunari way. But Kalen's mind was elsewhere. 5 years in the past, remembering a purple-skinned girl who'd laughed for the first time in her life when he'd shown her how humans made shadow puppets on the wall. The cell they threw him into was surprisingly comfortable by prisoner standards. A bed that adjusted to his body temperature, walls that became transparent at will to show the storm-racked landscape outside, even a food synthesizer programmed with basic human nutrition requirements. The Drunari might be cold, but they were civilized about it. He settled onto the bed, his jaw still throbbing from Serenya's strike. It had been worth it to see that crack in her facade, to know that somewhere beneath the princess and the warrior and the emotional conditioning, the curious girl who'd once asked him if human dreams really contained colors still existed. Hours passed, the ion storm outside intensified, turning the sky into a cascade of purple and gold lightning. He watched it dance across the acid seas, remembering how Serenya had described them that night 5 years ago. "Beautiful and deadly," she'd said, "like most things on my world." "Including you?" he'd asked, emboldened by synthetic wine and her proximity. She'd tilted her head. That gesture he'd learned meant she was processing something outside her understood parameters. "I am not beautiful by Drunari standards. My emotional responses are too visible. It is a flaw that my father says will either doom me or save me, depending on the path I choose." He wondered which path she'd chosen, or if the choice had been made for her the day her father died, and they'd lied about how... The cell door chimed, then dissolved. He expected guards, possibly an execution squad if the council had decided to skip the trial altogether. Instead, a single figure entered, wrapped in a hooded cloak that obscured their features. But he knew that walk, the slight favor of the left leg from an old training injury, the way she held her hands, ready to strike or defend in equal measure. "Hello, Serenya," he said without looking up from the storm. She pushed back her hood, revealing a face painted with exhaustion and something that might have been grief. "You have 10 minutes before the guard rotation. Explain." "No foreplay? No. How have you been?" "Kalen." Sorry about the war and the attempted genocide of your species." 9 minutes and 40 seconds. He stood, moving to face her properly. This close. He could see the strain in her features, the micro-expressions her people would consider shameful. "Your father contacted me 8 months before he died. He'd discovered something about the Council, about their plans for humanity. He wanted to prevent the war, but he needed someone on the human side he could trust. And he chose you, a random soldier." "A random soldier who'd made his daughter laugh," Kaylin corrected. "He had me investigated after our date. Did you know that he wanted to know who'd managed to crack through your conditioning enough to provoke genuine emotional responses? He was curious about me, said I reminded him of someone." "Who?" "Your mother." Serenia flinched as if he'd struck her. "My mother was Drunari." "Your mother was half human," Kaylin said gently. "Another truth they've hidden from you. Your green eyes aren't a genetic anomaly. Serenia, their inheritance." She sank onto the single chair in the cell, her perfect posture finally breaking. "That's impossible. The genetic screening would have—" "Your father falsified the records. He loved her enough to risk everything, to hide what she was even after she died. But the Council found out eventually. That's why they killed him. Not because he was weak or a traitor, but because he'd contaminated the royal bloodline with human DNA. Because you exist." She was shaking now, tiny tremors her training couldn't suppress. "You're lying. This is psychological warfare. You're trying to—" He reached into his jacket, moving slowly so she wouldn't perceive it as a threat. The guards had searched him thoroughly, but they'd missed the one thing that mattered, hidden in a biometric pocket keyed to his DNA. His fingers found the small object, no bigger than his thumb, wrapped in preservation cloth that had cost him 3 months' wages to obtain. "Your father gave me this," he said, placing it on the table between them. "He said when the time was right, you'd understand what it meant." With trembling fingers, she unwrapped the cloth. The silver feather within caught the light of the ion storm. Seeming to glow with internal radiance, it was impossibly delicate, each barb perfectly preserved despite being allegedly thousands of years extinct. "A freedom memory," she breathed, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "Their legend, myth. The last one died with the first speakers. Your father found it in the ruins beneath Colony 7, the same ruins the Council destroyed along with 30,000 civilians to keep secret. They weren't just hiding evidence of their betrayal. Serenia. They were hiding evidence of what the Drunari and humans used to be, before the segregation, before the genetic purging, before we forgot we were once the same species, diverged, but not divided." She picked up the feather with infinite care, as if it might dissolve at her touch. "The stories say whoever holds one can see the truth of their bloodline, that they can remember what was lost." "Have you ever wondered why you're different?" Kaylin asked softly. "Why you feel things your people say are impossible? Why your tears are falling right now even though Drunari don't cry?" She touched her cheek, staring at the moisture on her fingertips as if she'd never seen water before. "The conditioning is supposed to be perfect." "It is, for full-blooded Drunari, but you're something else. Serenia. You're what we used to be before fear and prejudice split us apart. You're the bridge your father died trying to build." She stood abruptly, the feather clutched in her hand. "If this is true, if even half of what you're saying is real, then everything I've believed, everything I've fought for, has been a lie," he finished. "I'm sorry. I know what that feels like. I thought I was fighting for humanity's survival. Turns out I was just another pawn in someone else's game." She looked at him then, really looked at him. And for a moment he saw past the princess and the warrior to the girl who'd once asked him if human hearts really broke or if it was just a metaphor. "They do," he'd told her, "but they heal too, usually stronger than before." "Why didn't you contact me?" she asked. "After that night, after you just disappeared." "The war started 3 days later. Your father was dead within a week, and you," he shrugged, trying to seem casual about a wound that had never quite healed. You became the Princess Cathar, defender of the Drunari, scourge of humanity. Not exactly someone I could send a casual message to asking if you wanted to grab coffee and discuss our species' mutual annihilation. I looked for you, she admitted quietly, in the casualty lists. After every battle, I checked to see if your name appeared. Why? Because you taught me to laugh, she said simply. And in 5 years of war, through all the death and darkness, I never forgot how that felt, how you made me feel. The guard rotation chime echoed through the corridor. Their time was up. Serenia pulled her hood back up, once again becoming the shadow she'd entered as, "The council will vote on your execution tomorrow," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "The evidence against you is overwhelming." "I know. You'll die. Probably." She paused at the door, not turning back, unless someone with sufficient authority were to invoke the right of claim, an ancient law that allows a member of the royal family to take possession of a prisoner for personal purposes. Kaylin's heart skipped. That sounds ominous. It should. The claimed prisoner becomes property, no rights, no freedom, completely at the mercy of their owner. She turned then, and even beneath the hood, he could see the slight smile playing at her lips. Of course, if that owner were to be very careless, they might lose track of their property near a shipping dock. They might even accidentally leave a transport unlocked with coordinates to neutral space already programmed. That would be terribly irresponsible. Unforgivably so, the owner would probably be distracted. You see, perhaps discovering evidence of a conspiracy that goes all the way to the council's highest levels. Perhaps learning that everything they believed about their heritage, their people, and their war was built on lies. She started to leave, then paused. One more time. "The pizza," she said suddenly. "That night, you tried to teach me about pizza. I never understood why humans would put so many contradictory flavors together. And now I think I understand. Sometimes things that shouldn't work together create something better than either could alone." She pulled out a small device, checking something on its screen. "Guard rotation in 30 seconds. Whatever happens tomorrow. Kaylin Ward, thank you. For the truth, for the feather, for teaching me that touching doesn't always mean violence." "Serenia," he called as she reached the door. She stopped but didn't turn. "Your father's last words were about you. He said, 'Tell her the snow was real.'" Her shoulders shook once, a single sob that she quickly suppressed. "I was 4, she whispered. "He took me to the polar regions illegally. It was snowing. Actual frozen water falling from the sky. I'd never seen anything so beautiful, so impossible. He made me promise never to tell anyone, said it would be our secret. I thought I dreamed it. He loved you more than his empire, more than his species' prejudices, more than his own life. He wanted you to know that." She left without another word, the door solidifying behind her. Kaylin sat back down on the bed, staring at the space where the feather had been. Outside, the ion storm raged on, painting the world in shades of violence and beauty. Tomorrow, he would either die or disappear. Either way, his mission was complete. He delivered the truth to the one person who might be able to use it, the daughter of 2 worlds, carrying the genetic legacy of both species, holding a feather from a time when that wasn't considered abomination, but evolution. He thought about that night 5 years ago, how she'd eventually tried the pizza despite her suspicions, the face she'd made at the first bite, then the surprise when she'd immediately taken a second. "It's chaos," she'd said, "but somehow it works." "Like us," he'd replied, not meaning to say it out loud. She'd studied him with those impossible green eyes, head tilted in that processing gesture. "We're different species, genetically incompatible, historically opposed, culturally contradictory. And yet here we are, sharing dinner and actually enjoying ourselves." "Yes," she'd said. And for the first time that night, she'd smiled. Not the practiced diplomatic expression her training provided, but something real and uncertain and absolutely beautiful. Here we are. 5 years, a war, and countless deaths later. Here they were again, still contradictory, still impossible, still somehow working despite everything the universe threw at them. The storm outside began to calm, the lightning less frequent but more intense, as if the planet itself was holding its breath for what came next. Kalen lay back on the prison bed, closing his eyes and letting himself remember. Just for a moment. The weight of her hand in his when she'd finally understood that holding hands was about connection, not combat. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, death or freedom, revelation or revolution, but tonight, he'd sleep knowing that somewhere in this crystalline palace, a purple-skinned princess with human eyes was holding a silver feather and remembering that impossible things sometimes turned out to be real. The snow was real. The feelings were real. And maybe, just maybe, the future they'd both given up on was real too. He drifted off to sleep with the ghost of her smile haunting his dreams, unaware that 3 levels above, Serenia stood at her window, the freedom memory feather pressed to her chest, tears streaming down her face as she watched the same storm and made a decision that would reshape 2 civilizations. The guard outside her door, loyal to her rather than the council, pretended not to notice when she began accessing classified archives from her private terminal. He also pretended not to notice when she sent an encrypted message to a certain group of military officials who'd served under her father. And he definitely didn't notice when she began preparing a very specific set of documents that would be needed to invoke the right of claim at tomorrow's execution. After all, in the game of empires and species, sometimes the most powerful move was to pretend you didn't see the revolution beginning right in front of you. The first part of their story was ending, but like all good endings, it was really just another beginning wearing a disguise. The execution chamber was a monument to Drunari efficiency, all clean lines and purposeful geometry. The walls pulsed with a bioluminescent rhythm that supposedly calmed the condemned, though Kalen suspected it was more for the comfort of the witnesses than the soon-to-be deceased. He stood at the center of the crystalline platform, energy restraints holding him in place while the council assembled in their tiered seats above. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was about to die in a room that looked like an opera house. All it needed was someone singing about tragedy, and the metaphor would be complete. Serenia entered last, as protocol demanded. She wore the formal execution robes of her office, deep purple trimmed with silver that caught the light like liquid mercury. Her face was a masterpiece of controlled neutrality, but Kalen had learned to read the tiny tells that betrayed her thoughts. The slight tension in her jaw, the way her fingers pressed against her thigh in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She was nervous. Good. That meant she had a plan. The lead counselor, Elder Thexer, rose from his seat. His mask today was particularly elaborate, a writhing mass of metallic tendrils that suggested both authority and barely contained violence. Kalen Ward, you stand convicted of espionage, sabotage, and crimes against the Drunari Empire. The sentence is death by molecular dissolution. Do you have any final words? Just a question, Kalen said, his voice carrying across the chamber with surprising clarity. Do you ever take those masks off? Or do you sleep in them too, because that seems uncomfortable? A ripple of outrage passed through the assembled witnesses. Thexer's tendrils writhed faster. Your disrespect even in the face of death proves humanity's inherent savagery. My bad jokes in the face of death prove humanity's inherent optimism, Kalen corrected. There's a difference. Proceed with the execution, Thexar commanded, his patience clearly exhausted. The dissolution platform began to hum, its surface growing warm beneath Kalen's feet. He'd researched this particular method of execution once, back when he'd thought knowing would make it less terrifying. It hadn't. The device would break down his molecular bonds over the course of 30 seconds, essentially unmaking him atom by atom. The Drunari claimed it was painless. The screams of previous victims suggested otherwise. Wait. Serenia's voice cut through the rising hum like a blade through silk. She stepped forward, her robes flowing around her like purple water. I invoke the right of claim. The humming stopped. The entire chamber fell silent. Even Thexar's mask tendrils froze mid-writhe. Princess Cathar, Elder Thexar said slowly. Surely you understand what you're saying. The right of claim hasn't been invoked in 3 centuries. Then it's overdue, Serenia replied, her voice steady as bedrock. The law is clear. Any member of the royal bloodline may claim a condemned prisoner as personal property. I claim this human. For what purpose? Another counselor. Madame Yurix leaned forward in her seat. Her mask was a smooth mirror that reflected a distorted version of whoever looked at it. The right of claim was meant for preserving valuable assets, not indulging personal vendettas. Not personal, Serenia laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to draw blood. You think this is personal? This human possesses information about a conspiracy within our own government, intelligence that could prevent another war. I claim him for interrogation and intelligence extraction. He's already been interrogated, Thexar countered, extensively. By amateurs, Serenia said dismissively. I trained under Master Korvax himself. I can extract information from a stone if given enough time. This human will reveal everything he knows, and then he'll serve as bait to draw out his conspirators. Kaelin had to admire her performance. She'd found the perfect angle, appealing to their paranoia and bloodlust simultaneously. The council members were whispering among themselves, masks bobbing like predators deciding if the prey was worth the hunt. There's another issue, Thexar said, and something in his tone made Kaelin's skin crawl. Your compromised genetics have been brought to our attention. Princess, your mother's questionable bloodline raises concerns about your judgment. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Serenia went perfectly still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence in her species. My genetics, she said softly, have been verified by the Imperial Archive, unless you're suggesting the Empire's own records are falsified. I'm suggesting, Thexar replied, that sometimes records can be adjusted for political convenience. Your father was known for his unconventional views. My father was known for his victories, Serenia shot back. 12 major campaigns, 43 successful negotiations, and the integration of 6 systems into the Empire. What's your record? Elder Thexar. Besides sitting in that chair and criticizing those who actually bleed for our people. The tension ratcheted up another notch. Several guards shifted nervously, hands moving to weapons. Kaelin could feel the situation balanced on a knife's edge, ready to tip into bloodshed at the slightest provocation. Then Serenia did something unexpected. She pulled out the silver feather. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several council members actually stood, their masks unable to hide their shock. The feather caught the bioluminescent light, seeming to glow with its own inner radiance. A freedom memory, someone whispered. Impossible. Nothing is impossible, though, Serenia said, holding the feather high. This was hidden in our own archives, our own history, buried and forgotten because it didn't fit the narrative the council wanted to promote. How many other truths have you hidden? How many lies have you told our people? Where did you get that? Thexar demanded, his mask tendrils now writhing in what looked like agitation. From someone who believed the truth was more important than politics, Serenia replied. Someone who died for that belief. She was walking a dangerous line. Kaelin realized, not quite accusing them of murdering her father, but implying it heavily enough that those listening would draw their own conclusions. The freedom memory changes nothing, Madame Yurix interjected. It's a relic from a dead age. A relic that proves we weren't always what we are now, Serenia countered. That proves we once embraced connection rather than isolation, emotion rather than suppression. That proves the very foundations of our society are built on fear rather than strength. Careful, Princess, Thexar warned. You're approaching treason. I'm approaching truth, she replied, but I understand if that frightens you. The truth has a way of destroying comfortable lies. She turned to address the wider chamber, her voice carrying to every witness present, "I claim this human under the right of claim. Any who dispute my right may challenge me in formal combat, as tradition demands." The silence stretched taut. Formal combat with a member of the royal family was technically legal, but it was also usually fatal. Serenia had been trained by the best warriors in the empire. More importantly, she'd been trained to kill without hesitation. No challenges. She waited exactly the traditional 3 heartbeats. Then the human is mine. The energy restraints around Kalen deactivated, and he nearly fell, his legs numb from standing in one position for so long. 2 guards moved to flank him, but Serenia waved them off. "I'll handle my property myself," she said coldly. "Send the necessary documentation to my quarters." She grabbed Kalen's arm, her grip just shy of painful, and marched him out of the chamber. He had enough presence of mind to stumble, playing up the role of defeated prisoner. Behind them, the council erupted in heated discussion, but the die was cast. The right of claim was sacred law, older than the council itself. They walked in silence through the crystalline corridors, past guards who watched with mixture of curiosity and disgust. A Drunari princess claiming a human prisoner as property would be scandal enough to feed the gossip networks for months. Only when they reached her private quarters, the doors sealed and privacy shields activated, did she finally release him. "That was incredibly stupid," she said, sinking into a chair like her strings had been cut. "Showing the feather like that. They'll know I know." "They already suspected," Kalen said, rubbing his arm where she'd gripped it. "You just confirmed it. Sometimes the best defense is to attack first." Human military philosophy. Human poker philosophy. When in doubt, go all in and make the other guy blink first. She laughed, a sound that was part hysteria and part genuine amusement. "We're going to die. You realize that, right? The council won't let this stand. They'll find a way to eliminate us both." "Probably," Kalen agreed, looking around her quarters. They were surprisingly sparse for royalty, all clean lines and functional furniture, but there were touches of personality too, a shelf of actual paper books, rare beyond measure, a collection of specimens in preservation jars, including what looked like a napkin with a chemical formula drawn on it. Nice place, very minimalist dictator chic. "It's called efficiency," she said, but there was no heat in it. "We have perhaps 6 hours before they make their move, less if they're truly desperate." "So, what's the plan? You didn't invoke the ancient law and challenge the entire power structure just to buy us 6 hours. She stood, moving to a wall panel that looked identical to every other wall panel, but when she pressed her hand against it, it dissolved to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was equipment he recognized: military-grade weapons, survival gear, and most importantly, a communication array that definitely wasn't standard issue. "My father's contingency plan," she explained. "He knew the council would eventually move against him. He prepared for it. What he didn't prepare for was them moving so quickly after he made contact with you." "He mentioned others," Kalen said, understanding dawning. "Others in the military who knew the truth. Admiral Kresh, Commander Joval, Captain Terex, all dead within a year of my father, all supposedly killed in action against humans." She pulled out the communication array, fingers flying over its controls. "But their subordinates are still alive, still loyal to my father's memory, and very, very angry about how their commanders died." "A coup? A restoration," she corrected, "returning the empire to what it was before the council corrupted it, before we forgot that strength doesn't mean isolation." The array hummed to life, and immediately several voices began speaking in rapid Drunari. Serenia responded in kind, her tone shifting from princess to military commander in an instant. Kalen couldn't follow the conversation, but he recognized the cadence of orders being given and received. When she finally shut down the array, her face was grim. "It's begun. Admiral Kresh's daughter has secured the fleet. Commander Joval's son has the ground forces. They've been waiting for a signal. The feather was that signal." "You planned this." I planned for the possibility, she admitted. After you told me about my mother, about the conspiracy, I started investigating. What I found, she shuddered. The council hasn't just been lying about the war. They've been systematically eliminating anyone with mixed heritage, anyone who shows emotional variance, anyone who questions. They're trying to breed us into perfect, emotionless weapons. Why? Because emotions are unpredictable. Love makes you do stupid things like claiming enemy prisoners as property. Grief makes you question orders. Joy makes you want to preserve life rather than end it. She moved to another hidden panel, this one revealing a medical scanner. They've been putting suppressants in our food, our water, even our air, keeping us docile, controllable. She ran the scanner over herself, and the results made her laugh bitterly. Except it doesn't work on me. My hybrid genetics make me immune. I've been pretending my entire life, mimicking the emotional deadness I saw in others, never realizing I was the only one actually feeling anything. You're not the only one, Kaylin said quietly. The soldiers who contacted your father, the ones supporting you now, they must have some immunity too. Maybe not complete, but enough to question. Enough to remember what we lost, she agreed. She moved to the window, looking out at the city beyond. In 6 hours, either we'll be dead or the Empire will be in civil war. Either way, everything changes. For what it's worth, Kaylin said, joining her at the window, your father would be proud. You're finishing what he started. He started it for my mother, she said softly. For love. I'm finishing it for... She trailed off, uncertainty crossing her features. For... She turned to look at him, those impossible green eyes reflecting the stormlight outside. I don't know, for the truth, for justice, for the chance that maybe, just maybe, we don't have to keep killing each other. Those are good reasons. Are they enough? He thought about it, really thought about it. 5 years ago, you asked me why humans fought so hard when we were obviously outmatched. Remember what I told you? You said humans were too stupid to know when they were beaten. The polite version, yes, but the real answer is that we fight for each other, for the person next to us in the trenches, for the family back home, for the stranger we've never met but who deserves a chance at life. He paused. For the purple-skinned girl who once tried to analyze the molecular structure of pizza. She laughed despite everything. That was good pizza. It was terrible pizza. Station food always is, but you made it memorable. Kaylin. She stopped, struggling with something. That night, before the war started, if things had been different... Don't, he said gently. That way lies madness. We can't change what happened. But we can change what happens next, she said. And there was steel in her voice now. The council will send their loyalists soon. Elite guards, probably. They'll try to make it look like a terrorist attack. How many? 20? Maybe 30. They'll want overwhelming force. And our defenses. She smiled, and it was all teeth. Me, you, and every dirty trick my father ever taught me. She moved to the weapons cache, pulling out items and tossing them to him. Can you still shoot? It's like riding a bicycle. If bicycles were designed to kill people at long range, your humor is still terrible. Your appreciation for it is still non-existent. They prepared in comfortable silence, checking weapons, setting traps, preparing for a battle they probably wouldn't survive, but there was something right about it. Something that felt like destiny, or at least a very poetic form of justice. Kaylin, Serenia said suddenly, I need to tell you something about the feather. He looked up from the pulse rifle he was calibrating. What about it? It's not just a symbol, it's active. The Freedom Memory feathers were designed to carry genetic information, to preserve bloodlines and histories. When I touched it, she hesitated. I saw things. Memories that weren't mine. A time when humans and Drunari lived together, loved together, had children together. Your parents. Before them, long before, thousands of years ago, we were one people. The separation, the genetic divergence, It was artificial, engineered by those who wanted to create a warrior race and a worker race. The Council knows this. They've always known. The implications hit him like a physical blow. The entire war is built on a lie. We're not different species. We're cousins, separated and modified, but still fundamentally the same. The feather proves it. That's why they had to destroy them all. Except they missed one. My father didn't find it, she admitted. He created it, using his own genetic material and my mother's, encoding the truth into something that couldn't be destroyed or discredited. He knew someday someone would need proof. And that someone is you. Us, she corrected. I can't do this alone. The military will follow me because of my blood, but they need to see Human and Drunari working together. They need to see that it's possible. An alarm chimed softly. Serenia checked a hidden display. They're here. 2 squads approaching from different directions. They've disabled the main security grid. Convenient of them to announce themselves. They want me to know. They want me afraid. She chambered around in her weapon with practiced ease. They really should have done their research better. The first explosion shook the room, a breaching charge against the main door. But Serenia had anticipated that, and the door held, reinforced with military-grade plating her father had installed years ago. Secondary entrance, she said calmly, moving to cover a ventilation grate that was already beginning to glow with cutting tool heat. The battle, when it came, was brief and vicious. The Loyalist guards were well-trained and well-equipped, but they were used to fighting enemies who followed predictable patterns. Serenia and Kaelin fought like chaos incarnate, she with the precise lethality of Drunari martial arts, he with the adaptive brutality of human combat training. The first wave through the door met automated turrets Serenia had hidden in the walls. The second wave found Kaelin waiting with grenades and harsh language. The third wave discovered that Serenia had rigged the entire floor with shock mines. "You're enjoying this," Kaelin observed, ducking as pulse fire scorched the air where his head had been. "I've been wanting to do this for years," she admitted, dropping 2 guards with shots so precise they looked choreographed. Every council meeting, every pompous decree, every time they told me emotion was weakness. "Therapy through violence, very human of you." "I'm half human," she reminded him, then paused. "That's the first time I've said that out loud. How does it feel?" "Like coming home." The remaining guards regrouped for a final push. Kaelin could hear them in the corridor, preparing something big. "They're going to blow the whole wall." "Let them," Serenia said, pulling him toward the window. "Remember I said my father prepared for everything?" She pressed a sequence on her wrist device, and the window dissolved. Not shattered, not opened, but dissolved at a molecular level. Beyond was not the 1,000-foot drop to the city below, but a transport platform, hovering, silent, and invisible. "Cloaked ship," she explained, pushing him toward it. "Another gift from Father." They leaped just as the wall exploded behind them, the blast wave actually helping propel them onto the transport. Serenia rolled to her feet and slammed her hand on the control panel. The transport surged away from the palace, leaving the confused guards firing at empty air. "Where are we going?" Kaelin asked, catching his breath. "The fleet," she replied, pulling up a navigation display. "Admiral Crush's daughter is waiting. The revolution needs its symbol." She looked at him. "Both of them. I'm a symbol now. The human who revealed the truth, the warrior who survived execution, the man who—" She stopped. "Who what?" "Who made me remember what it feels like to hope." The transport rose through the atmosphere, leaving the palace and its conspiracies behind. Below them, the city was beginning to light up with emergency signals. The revolution had begun, sparked by a silver feather and 2 people who shouldn't exist, fighting for a future that shouldn't be possible. "Serenia," Kaelin said as they broke through the cloud layer, "what happens after? If we win, if we expose the truth, what then?" "Then we rebuild," she said simply, "not as conquerors and conquered, but as what we always should have been, one people, divided by lies but united by truth." That's a beautiful dream. It's not a dream, she said, pulling out the feather again. It glowed softly in the dim light of the transport, carrying its message of memory and possibility. It's a promise, one my father died to make, one we'll live to keep. The transport entered hyperspace, leaving Vareth Prime behind, but Kaelin knew they'd be back, with a fleet, with an army, with the truth that would shatter an empire built on lies. The feather had started something that couldn't be stopped, and somewhere in the space between human and Drunari, between war and peace, between what was and what could be, two unlikely allies were writing a new chapter in their species' shared history. The revolution had begun, and it started with a legend that turned out to be true. The flagship Retribution's daughter hung in space like a predator waiting to strike, its hull a masterwork of Drunari engineering that somehow managed to look both beautiful and terrifying. As their transport approached, Kaelin could see the scars of recent battle along its sides, testament to the fight Admiral Kresh's daughter had waged to secure the fleet. "That's a lot of firepower," he observed, counting the weapon arrays visible from just this angle. "One ship," Serenia replied, her hands dancing over the communication console. "Lysara has 43 more under her command, all crewed by those who remember what loyalty means." The docking bay that received them was cavernous, filled with fighters and transports in various states of repair. But it was the crowd that made Kaelin's breath catch. Hundreds of Drunari soldiers stood at attention, their faces showing something he'd never seen before. In 5 years of war, genuine emotion, hope, uncertainty, determination, all written clearly on features that should have been masks of indifference. A woman strode forward from the crowd, her bearing military precise, but her eyes warm with something that might have been affection. She was older than Serenia, perhaps 40 standard years, with the kind of scars that spoke of frontline command rather than palace politics. "Princess," she said, then surprised everyone by pulling Serenia into a brief, fierce embrace. "Your father would be proud." "Lysara," Serenia returned the embrace with equal intensity. "How many know?" "All of them," Lysara replied, gesturing to the assembled soldiers. "We've been screening for emotional variants for months. Anyone who showed signs of immunity to the suppressants was quietly recruited. These are the ones who can still feel. And the others? Confined to quarters, not imprisoned, just separated. When we reveal the truth about the suppressants, they'll understand. They're victims too, just in a different way." Lysara's attention turned to Kaelin, and he found himself subjected to the kind of scrutiny that could peel paint. "So you're the human who started all this?" "I prefer catalyst of chaos, but sure," Kaelin replied. She almost smiled. Almost. "My father spoke of you in his final transmission, said you were either humanity's greatest spy or its biggest fool. Por qué no los dos?" "What?" Old Earth expression. Means why not both? This time she did smile, sharp and appreciative. "I see why the princess risked everything for you." "It wasn't for him," Serenia interjected quickly, too quickly. "It was for the truth." "Of course," Lysara said in a tone that suggested she believed that about as much as she believed in the Tooth Fairy. "Come, we have much to discuss and little time. The Council's loyalists are mobilizing. We have perhaps 12 hours before they attempt to retake the fleet." They moved through the ship's corridors, and Kaelin noticed something extraordinary. The Drunari they passed were talking. Actually talking. Not the clipped, efficient exchanges he was used to, but real conversations with laughter and animated gestures. One group was even playing what looked like a card game, arguing good-naturedly over the rules. "It's like a different species," he murmured to Serenia. "It's who we really are," and she replied, "who we were before the council decided emotion was a weakness to be eliminated." The war room they entered was a symphony of controlled chaos. Tactical displays showed ship positions, planet alignments, and troop movements across 3 systems. Officers called out updates and confirmations, their voices overlapping in a dance of military precision. "Report," Serenia commanded, and the room stilled. A young officer, barely out of academy by the look of him, stepped forward. "Princess, we control 60% of the fleet. The remainder are holding position near Vareth Prime, awaiting orders from the Council. Ground forces are split roughly even. The outer colonies." He hesitated. "The outer colonies," Serenia prompted, "have declared neutrality pending proof of the Council's crimes. They want evidence, not just accusations." "Then we give them evidence," Kaelin said, stepping forward. "I didn't spend 3 months in that archive just to memorize poetry. I have documents, recordings, genetic samples, everything needed to prove the Council's conspiracy." "Where?" Lysara demanded. Kaelin smiled and tapped his temple. "Neural implant, military grade, unhackable, and currently containing about 3 terabytes of extremely incriminating data. All I need is a secure terminal and about an hour to download it all." The room erupted in discussion, but Serenia raised her hand for silence. "Do it, Lysara. Assign your best tech team to assist. We broadcast everything simultaneously across all channels. Make it impossible to suppress or deny." "There's one problem," a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a figure in medical whites, his face bearing the telltale marks of extensive genetic modification. "The suppressants in the general population won't just wear off. Without proper treatments, the psychological shock could kill millions." "Dr. Hexen," Serenia acknowledged. "I thought you were dead." "The Council thought so, too," Hexen replied, entering the room with the aid of a walking stick. "Your father arranged my death after I refused to continue developing stronger suppressants. I've been working on an antidote ever since." "How long before it's ready?" "It's ready now. The question is distribution. We'd need to introduce it into the same systems they use for these suppressants: water, air, food. That means controlling the production facilities on Vareth Prime, which are in the heart of Council territory," Lysara pointed out. "It would be a suicide mission." "Not necessarily, Kaelin said, an idea forming. "What if we don't attack? What if we just visit?" Everyone stared at him. Serenia was the first to understand, her eyes lighting up with dangerous possibility. "A diplomatic mission." "Exactly. You're still technically a princess. You have the right to address the population directly. Call for a peace summit. Very public, very visible. While everyone's watching you, a small team infiltrates the facilities." "You mean while everyone's trying to kill me?" Serenia corrected. "Well, yes, but dramatically, with speeches and everything. Very distracting." "Your plan is to use the princess as bait." Lysara looked ready to throw him out an airlock. "His plan is to use me as a symbol," Serenia corrected. "The heir to the throne, standing before her people, revealing the truth. Even if they kill me, the message gets out. And if Dr. Hexen's team succeeds, the population will be free to actually feel the impact of that truth." "It's insane," Lysara said. "It's perfect," Serenia countered. "Kaelin, how long do you need to prepare the broadcast?" "Give me 2 hours, 3 to make it really damning." "You have 2. Dr. Hexen, select your team. Small, skilled, and absolutely loyal. Lysara, I need you to coordinate with the ground forces. When the suppressants fail, there will be chaos. We need to be ready to maintain order." "And you?" Lysara asked. "I'm going to do something I should have done years ago," Serenia said, her hand moving to the pouch at her belt where the silver feather rested. "I'm going to tell the truth." The next hours passed in a blur of preparation. Kaelin worked with the tech team, downloading years of evidence from his neural implant, documents showing the Council ordering the massacre at Colony 7, recordings of them discussing the genetic purification program, medical data proving the systematic poisoning of their own population. "This is monstrous," one of the techs whispered, reading through a particularly damning file. "They've been doing this for centuries." "Longer," Kaelin confirmed. "The original separation of human and Drunari DNA. It was their ancestors' project. They've been playing God with both species since before recorded history." Meanwhile, Serenia prepared her address. He found her in her quarters, staring at a blank screen, the cursor blinking accusingly. "Writer's block?" he asked. entering with 2 cups of something that might charitably be called coffee. "How do you tell your entire species that everything they believe is a lie?" she asked, accepting the cup gratefully. "How do you explain that their leaders have been slowly killing them for generations?" "You don't," Kaylin said, sitting beside her. "You tell them about hope, about what they could be without the suppressants, about the future that's possible when we stop fearing emotion." She looked at him, those green eyes searching his face. "Is that what you believe? That there's hope for us?" "I believe in you," he said simply. "I believed in you 5 years ago when you laughed at my terrible jokes. I believed in you when you chose truth over comfort. I believe in you now." She kissed him. It was sudden, desperate, and completely inappropriate given their circumstances. It was also perfect. 5 years of war, death, and separation crystallized into a single moment of connection that transcended species, politics, and probability. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Serenya's face showed a mixture of wonder and embarrassment. That was overdue," Kaylin finished, "by about 5 years. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "We're about to start a revolution that could kill us both, and all I can think about is how much I want to do that again." "Then we'd better survive," he said, "for the sake of future kisses." "For the sake of future kisses," she agreed solemnly, then ruined it by giggling. "Is it always like that with humans?" "No," he admitted. "Usually it's less complicated, less overthrowing governments and more dinner and a movie." "I'd like that," she said softly. "Dinner and a movie. Something normal." "Then we'd better get started on that revolution." She turned back to the screen, and this time the words flowed, not a political speech but a personal testimony. She spoke of her father, of discovering her mother's heritage, of the silver feather and what it represented. She spoke of love transcending boundaries, of strength found in vulnerability, of the courage required to feel in a society that demanded numbness. Kaylin watched her work, adding suggestions here and there, but mostly just marveling at her transformation. The rigid princess he'd rescued from an execution chamber was gone, replaced by someone incandescent with purpose. A chime interrupted them. Lysara's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All units, prepare for jump. We arrive at Vareth Prime in 30 minutes. "Ready?" Kaylin asked. "No," Serenya admitted, "but that's never stopped us before." They made their way to the bridge, where controlled chaos reigned. The main view screen showed the fleet in formation, 44 ships ready to jump into what might be their destruction. "The Council's forces?" Serenya asked. "Waiting," Lysara reported. "They know we're coming. They're betting we won't fire on Vareth Prime itself." "They're right," Serenya said. "We're not conquerors, we're liberators." "The distinction might be lost when their weapons open fire," Lysara pointed out. "Then we'd better make sure they don't," Serenya replied. She moved to the command chair, every inch the leader she was born to be. "Open a channel, all frequencies." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Princess." Serenya stood, the silver feather in her hand catching the bridge lights. "People of Vareth Prime, this is Princess Serenya Cathar. I come not as your enemy, but as your voice. For too long, we have been silenced by those who claim to lead us. For too long, we have been poisoned by those who claim to protect us. Today, that ends." She held up the feather. "This is a freedom memory, a relic of our true past. It carries a message not of division, but of unity. Not of suppression, but of celebration. We were not always what we are now. We can be more than what they've made us." The view screen split, showing reactions from across the planet. Crowds gathering in public squares, soldiers lowering their weapons to listen, even some council members watching from their chambers, faces hidden behind masks but body language betraying their attention. "In 1 hour, I will stand before you in the Plaza of Truth," Serenya continued. "I will present evidence of the Council's crimes. I will show you what they've hidden, and I will offer you a choice: remain slaves to their vision of perfection, or embrace the glorious chaos of being truly alive. She cut the transmission. The bridge was silent for a moment, then erupted in activity. "They're responding," the communication officer reported. "The council is calling for your arrest, but—" He paused, disbelief coloring his voice. "Ground forces are refusing. They want to hear what you have to say." "The suppressants are already weakening," Dr. Hexon said from his position at a secondary console. "Emotional variance is increasing across the population. They're starting to feel again." "Then we give them something to feel about," Serenia said. "Lysara, take us in. All ships, defensive positions only. We fire only if fired upon." The jump to Vareth Prime took seconds, but felt like hours. Kalen found himself holding his breath as the purple-green jewel of the Drunari homeworld filled the view screen. The Council's fleet hung in orbit, weapons powered but not targeting. Yet. "Incoming transmission," the communication officer announced. "It's Elder Thexar." "On screen," Serenia commanded. Thexar appeared, his mask writhing with barely controlled fury. "Princess Cathar, you are in violation of Imperial law. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." "I am invoking my hereditary right to address the people," Serenia replied calmly. "Unless you're suggesting the Council's authority supersedes thousand-year-old law, you are a half-breed abomination," Thexar snarled, abandoning all pretense of diplomacy. "Your very existence is a crime against genetic purity." "My existence is proof that your genetic purity is a lie," Serenia shot back. "And in 1 hour, everyone will know it." She cut the transmission before he could respond. "Take us down," she ordered. "Dr. Hexon, is your team ready?" "Ready, Princess. We'll need a distraction to reach the facilities." "You'll have one," Kalen promised. "The biggest distraction in Drunari history." "What are you planning?" Serenia asked suspiciously. He grinned. "Remember how you said I taught you to laugh well? I'm about to teach your entire species. Trust me, nothing is more distracting than unexpected joy." The descent through Vareth Prime's atmosphere was smooth despite the tension. The Council's fleet tracked them but didn't fire. Below, the capital city sprawled in crystalline perfection. Millions of Drunari going about their lives unaware that everything was about to change. The Plaza of Truth was already filling when they landed. Thousands had gathered, drawn by Serenia's transmission and the promise of answers. Council security forces ringed the area, but they looked uncertain, their rigid formation showing cracks. "Remember," Serenia said as they prepared to disembark, "we're not here to destroy, we're here to heal." "Healing hurts sometimes," Sion Kalen pointed out, checking his weapons one last time. "Then we'll hurt together," she replied, taking his hand, "human and Drunari, as it should have been all along." They stepped out into the purple-tinted sunlight of Vareth Prime, and the crowd's murmur rose to a roar. Some called out in support, others in condemnation, but all watched as Serenia walked toward the speaking platform at the plaza's center, her bearing regal despite the danger. Kalen scanned the crowd, his military training identifying threats and allies in equal measure. He saw Dr. Hexon's team slipping away toward their target, using the crowd as cover. He saw Council loyalists moving into position, weapons barely concealed, and he saw something else. Something that made him smile despite everything. Children, dozens of them pushed to the front by parents who wanted them to witness history. Their faces showed emotions their parents had been denied: curiosity, excitement, wonder. The suppressants had less effect on the young, and in their eyes, Kalen saw the future Serenia was fighting for. She reached the platform and turned to face her people. The crowd fell silent, waiting. In that moment, she wasn't just a princess or a revolutionary. She was the embodiment of change itself, standing between what was and what could be. "My people," she began, her voice carrying across the plaza without amplification, a trick of the platform's acoustic design. "I come before you with truth, painful truth, necessary truth, truth that will set us free." She held up the silver feather, and it caught the light like a star fallen to earth. "This is our past. This is our future. This is proof that everything we've been told about ourselves is a lie." The crowd leaned forward as one, and Kaylin felt the moment balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong word, one misstep, and violence would erupt. But Serenya navigated that edge with the grace of someone who'd been walking it her entire life. She told them everything: the genetic manipulation, the suppressants, the murder of those who questioned, the truth about humanity and their shared origins. She spoke of her mother, her father, and the love that had defied an empire's prejudices. She spoke of Kaylin and the sacrifice he'd made to bring them the truth. And as she spoke, something extraordinary happened. The crowd began to cry. Not all at once, but in waves, as the suppressants continued to weaken and emotions long dormant stirred to life. Tears of rage, of grief, of joy at feeling anything at all. The plaza filled with the sound of a species rediscovering its heart. "This is our moment of choice," Serenya concluded, her own tears flowing freely now. "We can choose fear or love, division or unity, the cold perfection of suppression or the messy beauty of genuine life. I've made my choice." She reached out to Kaylin, pulling him onto the platform beside her. "I choose connection over isolation. I choose hope over fear. I choose to believe that we are better together than apart." The crowd erupted, not in violence but in discussion, in argument, in the chaos of democracy being born in real time. Some fled, unable to process the emotional overload. Others pressed forward, desperate to touch the feather, to see the truth for themselves. And then the shooting started. The first pulse blast scorched the air where Serenya's head had been a microsecond before. Kaylin's combat instincts, honed by years of war, had already pulled her down, his body shielding hers as the platform erupted in chaos. "Snipers, 3 positions, oh," he barked, his trained eye tracking the trajectories. "Northeast tower, west balcony, and... shit, they've got someone in the crowd." Serenya rolled to her feet with fluid grace, the silver feather still clutched in her hand. Around them, the plaza descended into pandemonium, but not the stampede the council forces had probably expected. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The crowd turned on the shooters. An elderly Drunari male, tears streaming down his face from newly awakened emotions, tackled a council soldier who'd been raising his weapon. A group of young mothers formed a protective circle around children, their faces fierce with maternal instinct that no amount of suppression could fully eliminate. And throughout the crowd, those who'd been touched by Serenya's words began to fight back. "They're feeling," Serenya breathed in wonder. "They're actually feeling anger, protectiveness, courage." "Feel later. Survive now," Kaylin said, pulling her toward the platform's edge. But she resisted, standing tall despite the danger. "No," she said firmly. "If I run now, we lose everything. The council wins through fear. I won't give them that victory." She raised her voice, somehow projecting over the chaos. "See how they respond to truth with violence, with murder. This is the council's answer to your awakening. They would rather kill you all than see you free." Another shot rang out, this one catching her shoulder, spinning her around. Purple blood splattered across the white stone platform, and Kaylin felt something primal roar to life in his chest. He'd lost her once to war and separation. He would not lose her again to an assassin's bullet. He pulled his sidearm, a human-made weapon he'd kept hidden, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The sniper in the northeast tower fell. The one on the west balcony ducked for cover. The third, lost in the crowd, would have to wait. "Medical team, now!" he shouted into his comm unit, then turned to Serenya. She was on her knees, one hand pressed to her shoulder, but her eyes blazed with determination rather than pain. "Keep broadcasting," she gasped. "Make sure everyone sees this." The communication officer aboard the Retribution's daughter must have heard, because suddenly every screen in the plaza, every personal device, every public display across the planet showed the same image: Princess Serenya Cathar, bleeding purple blood that proved her mixed heritage, still standing, still fighting, still holding the silver feather high. Your princess bleeds for truth, Lysara's voice boomed from the ship's speakers. Your council murders for lies choose. The tide turned in that moment. Council security forces throughout the plaza found themselves facing not a mob, but an awakening. Some threw down their weapons, overcome by emotions they'd never felt before. Others doubled down, their conditioning holding even as their comrades faltered. Kalen spotted movement in his peripheral vision, the third sniper lining up another shot. Without thinking, he threw himself forward, intercepting the pulse blast meant for Serenia. The energy tore through his side, sending him sprawling across the platform. Kalen, Serenia's scream cut through everything else. She crawled to him, her injury forgotten, pressing her hands against the burning wound. No, 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 not now. Not when we're so close. He managed a pained smile. Hey, remember when you asked if human hearts really break? Don't you dare, she said fiercely, tears streaming down her face. Don't you dare make a joke right now. They do break, he continued, his voice growing weaker. But sometimes they break open, make room for something bigger. The medical team finally reached them, Drunari and human medics working together with desperate efficiency. As they worked, Kalen became aware of a strange silence falling over the plaza. He turned his head, vision blurring, to see something impossible. Elder Thexer stood at the plaza's edge, his ornate mask discarded, revealing a face that was ancient, scarred and streaming with tears. Behind him, a phalanx of council guards stood with weapons raised, but he held up one trembling hand, stopping them. Enough, he said, his voice carrying, despite its quietness, enough. He walked forward slowly, age showing in every step. The crowd parted before him, unsure whether to attack or flee. He stopped before the platform, looking up at Serenia with eyes that held centuries of regret. Your father came to me, he said, each word seeming to physically pain him. 20 years ago, he showed me evidence of what we'd done, what we'd become. I didn't listen. I was so certain that emotion was weakness, that purity was strength. I killed him for that certainty. The plaza erupted in shocked murmurs, but Thexer continued. I felt nothing when I gave the order. Nothing when 30,000 humans died at Colony 7. Nothing when we poisoned our own people to keep them compliant. But now, he touched his wet cheek in wonder. Now I feel everything, the weight of every death, every lie, every choice that led us to this moment. He pulled out a data pad, holding it up for all to see. This contains everything, every council secret, every hidden archive, every genetic record we tried to destroy. The princess speaks truth. We are one people divided by our own fear and prejudice. Why? Serenia asked, her voice thick with pain and confusion. Why reveal this now? Because, Thexer said, looking at Kalen's bleeding form, I just watched a human die to save a Drunari. After everything we've done to them, he still chose to save you. That kind of love. That's not weakness. That's the strength we abandoned in our pursuit of perfection. He turned to address the crowd. The council is dissolved. I'll stand trial for my crimes. All suppressant production will cease immediately. Those of you feeling emotion for the first time know that it will be overwhelming, but you will survive it. We survived without it for so long. We can survive with it again. He's not dying, Serenia said suddenly, fiercely. Kalen is not dying. The medical team exchanged glances. The human medic, a woman named Torres who'd served with Kalen, spoke gently. The damage is extensive, without a full surgical suite. Then get him to one, Serenia commanded. The Palace Medical Center. Now. The palace is still under council control. Lysara's voice came through the comms. Security won't let us through. They will, Thexer said quietly. He activated his own comm unit. All council forces, stand down immediately. Medical priority clearance for the plaza wounded. Anyone who impedes medical treatment will answer to me personally. The next minutes blurred together. Kalen found himself on a medical transport, Serenia's hand gripping his as Drunari physicians worked alongside human doctors. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was being saved by the same cooperation their relationship represented. "Stay with me," Serenia whispered, over and over. "We have that dinner to plan, movies to watch, a whole future to figure out." "Pizza," he managed to say, his voice barely audible. "You promised to try real pizza." She laughed through her tears. "The worst food in the galaxy. You said—" "The best worst food," he corrected, then let the darkness take him. He woke to purple sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. The room was clearly medical, but far more luxurious than any hospital he'd ever been in. Drunari medical equipment hummed softly around him, monitoring vitals with technology that made human medicine look primitive. "About time," a familiar voice said. He turned his head to find Serenia curled in a chair beside his bed, the silver feather resting on the table next to her. She looked exhausted but radiant, her shoulder bandaged but her eyes bright. 3 days. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Do you have any idea how much has happened?" "The revolution is over. Mostly. There are holdout colonies, some council loyalists who fled to the outer systems, but Vareth Prime is free. The suppressants are wearing off everywhere. It's chaotic. Beautiful, but chaotic." "Thexer, under house arrest pending trial, he's cooperating fully, providing evidence against other council members. Some have killed themselves rather than face judgment. Others are trying to bargain." She paused. "He asked to see you when you woke, to apologize." "Later," Kaelin said, struggling to sit up. "Much later. What about Dr. Hexen's mission?" "Complete success. The antidote is in the water supply, the air recyclers, everywhere. People are having emotional crashes as years of suppressed feelings surface, but the medical teams are managing it." She smiled softly. "Children are laughing. Couples are rediscovering love. Artists are creating again. Musicians are playing songs that were banned for causing excessive emotional response. It's like watching a civilization wake from a centuries-long nightmare." "And us?" Kaelin asked. "What happens to us now?" She was quiet for a moment, fidgeting with the hem of her medical gown. "I've been named interim leader until proper elections can be held. The first joint human Drunari elections in history. There's talk of reunification, of healing the divide between our species. It will take years, maybe generations, but it's beginning." "That's not what I meant." She looked at him then, those impossible green eyes full of uncertainty. "I don't know. Everything between us has happened in crisis. War, revolution, near-death experiences. What if without that, we're just—" "Two people who make each other laugh," Kaelin suggested. "Who challenge each other, who've literally saved each other's lives multiple times. Sounds terrible. We should definitely not explore that further." She hit him gently on his uninjured shoulder. "I'm being serious." "So am I." He caught her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Serenia, I've loved you since you tried to scientifically analyze the concept of humor and ended up laughing so hard you cried. The war, the revolution, all of it just confirmed what I already knew. You're extraordinary. I'm a half-breed political leader of a species in emotional chaos, with no idea how to navigate a normal relationship. And I'm a human soldier with more scars than sense and a terrible sense of humor. We're perfect for each other." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "This won't be easy. There will be those on both sides who see our relationship as betrayal, who think love between human and Drunari is abomination." "Let them," Kaelin said firmly. "We've already proved them wrong. Your very existence proves them wrong. Besides, since when have we ever done anything the easy way?" A knock at the door interrupted them. Lysera entered, her expression professionally neutral but her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Princess, the Joint Council is requesting your presence. And Captain Ward, there's a delegation from Earth that wants to speak with you. Apparently, you're being considered for some sort of medal." "Can it wait?" Serenia asked without looking away from Kaelin. "The future of two civilizations." "Yes." Lysera's professional composure cracked, and she smiled. I'll tell them you're in critical negotiations that cannot be interrupted, but eventually, you'll both need to face the universe you've created." After she left, Serenia pulled something from her pocket. It was a data pad, its screen showing what looked like a technical readout. "I had the science team analyze the feather, the genetic information encoded in it. Do you want to know what they found? Does it matter?" "It might." She took a breath. "The encoding isn't just historical. It's prophetic. Your DNA and mine, they're compatible, not just for reproduction, but for something more. The feather suggests our children would be the first of a new evolutionary branch. Neither human nor Drunari, but something beyond both." Kaelin absorbed this for a moment. Our hypothetical children would be evolutionary pioneers. Hypothetical. Well, we haven't even had that dinner yet. Seems presumptuous to plan for children before we've tried real pizza together. She laughed, that bright, genuine sound he'd fallen in love with years ago. "You're impossible. And you're overthinking. We just ended a war, exposed a centuries-old conspiracy, and started the reunification of two species. Maybe we can just focus on being together for a while before we worry about evolutionary leaps." "Just being together," she mused. "No crisis to manage, no government to overthrow, no assassins trying to kill us." Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she was crying again, but these were tears of joy, of relief, of a future suddenly full of possibility. "I need to tell you something," she said, "about your neural implant, the data you were carrying." "What about it?" "There was more than just evidence against the council. Your memories were partially uploaded too, including—" She blushed purple, a sight Kaelin found endlessly endearing. "Including your memories of our first date, every detail, every word, every feeling." "Embarrassing feelings." "Beautiful feelings. You really did fall for me that first night, didn't you? Despite everything and despite the species barrier, the cultural differences, my complete inability to understand human social cues." "Because of all that," Kaelin corrected, "you were so earnest, so determined to understand. You approached everything with such curiosity and wonder. How could I not fall for you?" Another knock interrupted them, this time more insistent. The door opened to reveal Dr. Hexen, his expression urgent. "Princess, Captain, forgive the interruption, but we have a situation. The feather, it's active." They both looked at the silver feather on the bedside table. It was glowing, pulsing with a soft inner light that seemed to respond to their proximity. "What does that mean?" Serenia asked. "It means," Dr. Hexen said, his voice filled with awe, "that it's recognized something or someone. May I—" At their nod, he approached with a scanner, running it over the feather, then over both of them. His eyes widened at the results. "Remarkable. Your combined genetic signatures have activated a dormant program in the feather. It's transmitting." "Transmitting what to whom?" "Unknown, but the signal is powerful, and it's using a frequency we've never seen before. It's almost like it's calling something." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the room activated. They showed the same image, a star map, but not one any of them recognized. At its center, a single system pulsed in sync with the feather's glow. "Those aren't our stars," Kaelin said slowly. "That's not our galaxy." "No," Dr. Hexen agreed, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not. The feather isn't just a memory of our past. It's a beacon, and we've just activated it." Serenia picked up the feather, its glow intensifying at her touch. A beacon calling whom? As if in answer, a new image appeared on the screens, a ship, but unlike anything either human or Drunari had ever built. It was organic and mechanical simultaneously, beautiful and alien, and it was moving. The trajectory calculations showed it would arrive in their system in 6 months. "The first speakers," Dr. Hexen breathed. "The legends say they left to explore beyond our galaxy, promising to return when we were ready, when we'd overcome our divisions and reunited as one people. And we just told them we're ready, Serenia said, looking at Kaylin with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. No pressure, Kaylin said dryly. We've only got 6 months to actually become the unified civilization we're pretending to be. Then we'd better get started, Serenia said, squeezing his hand. Together. The feather pulsed once more, then went dormant, its message sent, but its work was far from over. In Serenia's hand, it was no longer just a symbol of the past, but a promise of the future. A future where human and Drunari would face the unknown not as enemies, but as one people, united by truth, strengthened by emotion, and bound by love. Outside, Vareth Prime's 3 moons rose over a city transforming itself. In the streets, humans and Drunari worked side by side, clearing away the debris of revolution and building something new. Children of both species played together, their laughter echoing through crystal canyons that had known only silence for centuries. And in a medical room in the heart of the palace, 2 unlikely lovers held each other and a silver feather, preparing to lead their peoples into a future that neither species could have imagined alone. The revolution was over. The real work was just beginning. But for now, in this moment, Kaylin and Serenia were content to simply be, to hold each other, to marvel at the impossibility of their love and the possibility of their future, to plan that dinner, that movie, that life together that had seemed like an impossible dream just days ago. "I love you," Serenia said quietly, the words still foreign on her tongue but feeling more right with each repetition. "I love you too," Kaylin replied, "even if you do analyze pizza." "Especially because I analyze pizza," she corrected, and they both laughed, the sound bright with hope and rich with promise. The feather rested between them, silent now but somehow watchful, as if it too was waiting to see what these 2 impossible lovers would do with the future they'd fought so hard to claim. 6 months later, the observation deck of the United Station Haven's Rest provided the perfect vantage point to witness history. The same station where Kaylin and Serenia had first met now served as the diplomatic center for the most important meeting in both species' history. Kaylin adjusted his formal uniform for the 10th time, earning an amused look from Serenia. "You face down armies without flinching, and you're nervous about this. Armies shoot at you. It's straightforward. This..." He gestured at the gathering crowd of human and Drunari dignitaries. "This is politics, and worse. Your politics involves actual ceremonies." She smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from her own attire, a stunning fusion of human and Drunari formal wear that had taken 3 design teams and countless arguments to perfect. The deep purple fabric seemed to shift between colors as she moved, while maintaining the clean lines that humans found appealing. At her throat, the silver feather hung from a simple chain, no longer glowing but somehow still commanding attention. "The first speakers will arrive within the hour," she said, checking her neural display. "Are you ready for this?" "Are any of us?" Kaylin countered. 6 months ago, we were trying to kill each other. Now we're presenting ourselves as a unified civilization to beings that might be our ancient ancestors, or might decide we're not worth their time. Or might decide we're a threat to be eliminated, Lysara added. Approaching with Dr. Hexen, the Admiral now wore insignia representing both fleets, a new design that had caused weeks of debate before approval. "The defense grid is ready, for what it's worth, though if beings that can travel between galaxies want us dead, I doubt our weapons will matter much." "Optimistic as always," Dr. Hexen said dryly. He'd aged visibly in the past months, the stress of overseeing the emotional integration of billions taking its toll. "The medical teams are on standby. We have no idea how first speaker physiology might affect us or vice versa." "Speaking of effects," Serenia said quietly, her hand moving unconsciously to her abdomen, "we should tell them." Kaylin caught her hand. Squeezing gently, they discovered it only a week ago. The impossible made real. The first hybrid pregnancy in recorded history, though if the feather's data was correct, far from the first in actual history. "After," he said. "Let's see if we survive first contact before we announce we're adding to the evolutionary tree." A chime echoed through the station, every screen activated, showing the same image, a ship emerging from what looked like a tear in space itself. It was even more magnificent in person than in the transmitted images, a flowing sculpture of organic curves and crystalline structures that hurt to look at directly, as if it existed in more dimensions than the human or Drunari eye could process. "All stations, maintain position," Serenia commanded through the joint communication network. "No aggressive actions. We meet them as we are, unified and unafraid." The ship approached slowly, almost cautiously. When it finally docked, it did so with a gentleness that seemed at odds with its enormous size. The airlock cycled, atmosphere readings showed compatibility, and then the doors opened. The being that emerged was both familiar and utterly alien, tall, perhaps 8 feet, with skin that seemed to shift between purple and pink depending on the angle of view. Its eyes were green, impossibly green, like looking into the heart of a forest that had never known axes. But it was the expression on its face that stopped everyone cold joy, pure and radiant. "Children," it said, and its voice carried harmonics that resonated in both human and Drunari hearing ranges. "You called, and we have come." It moved forward with grace that defied its size, stopping before Serenia and Kaelin. Its gaze lingered on the feather at her throat, and something like satisfaction crossed its features. "You are the bridge," it said to Serenia, "the joining that was prophesied, and you," it turned to Kaelin, "the catalyst that made it possible." It paused, tilting its head in a gesture achingly familiar. "You carry new life, the first of the reunited. May I—" Serenia nodded, seemingly unsurprised that it knew. The being reached out, its hand hovering over her abdomen without touching. Light pulsed between them, and Serenia gasped, her eyes widening. "What did you do?" Kaelin demanded, stepping protectively closer. "Nothing harmful," the being assured him. "Merely a gift. Your child will be the first true speaker in millennia, able to hear the songs between stars, to speak the language that binds all consciousness. They will be the herald of what your species will become." "Our species?" Serenia asked. "Singular." "You always were one species," the being replied. "We merely encourage development in different directions and experiment in potential. Some developed emotional depth and creativity." It gestured to the humans present. "Others developed control and precision." A gesture to the Drunari. "Apart, you each reached impressive heights. Together, you will surpass even us." "You separated us," Lysara said, her voice carrying an edge of accusation. "Centuries of war, millions dead because of your experiment." The being's expression shifted to something that might have been regret. "We gave you the tools for separation. You chose to use them, just as you chose to overcome them. Free will was always the most important variable. Without choice, growth is meaningless." "And now?" Serenia asked. "Why return now?" "Because you called," it said simply. The feather was more than memory or beacon. It was a test. Only when human and Drunari genetics combined in perfect harmony, only when true unity was achieved, could it activate. You've passed the test. Now, we offer you a choice. More beings emerged from the ship, each slightly different but sharing that same shifting quality, as if they were all variations on a theme neither fully human nor fully Drunari. "We are leaving," the first speaker continued. "This galaxy is yours now, to shape as you will. But we offer some of you the chance to come with us, to see what lies beyond, to learn what we've learned in our travels, to become teachers for other divided species struggling toward unity." The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Kaelin could feel the tension in the room, the weight of decision pressing on everyone present. "How many?" Serenia asked. "As many as wish, but know that the journey is one way. We travel beyond the veil of this dimension. You would return, eventually, but centuries would have passed here, perhaps millennia." "A few of us should go," Dr. Hexen said suddenly, Everyone turned to stare at him. To learn. To ensure we don't repeat the mistakes of division. I volunteer. Doctor, you're needed here, Serenia protested. No, he said gently. I've done what I can. The healing process is well underway. But imagine what we could learn. What knowledge we could send back. He looked at the first speaker. You can send information back, can't you? Knowledge flows freely between dimensions for those who know how to listen. It confirmed. Your speakers will hear, in dreams and inspiration. Over the next hour, 17 individuals volunteered, scientists, artists, philosophers, warriors, from both human and Drunari backgrounds. Each had their reasons, their hopes for what they might learn and share. As the volunteers prepared to depart, the first speaker approached Kaylin and Serenia one more time. You will not come. Our place is here, Serenia said firmly, leading the integration, raising the first generation that will know no division. And someone needs to keep her from overanalyzing the pizza, Kaylin added, earning an elbow to his ribs. The first speaker laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Humor. We'd forgotten how precious that is. Guard it well. It will serve you better than any weapon in the challenges ahead. Challenges, Serenia asked. What challenges? You are not alone in this universe. The being replied, Others watch, some with curiosity, some with hunger. Your unity makes you strong, but strength attracts attention. Be ready. With that ominous warning, the first speakers and their volunteers departed. The ship detached from the station with the same impossible grace, then simply ceased. One moment it was there. The next it had folded space around itself and vanished, leaving only a faint aurora in its wake. The gathered dignitaries stood in silence for a long moment, processing what had just occurred. Then, predictably, everyone started talking at once. Quiet, Serenia commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. We have work to do. Admiral Lysara, I want the defense grid upgraded immediately. If the first speaker is right about others watching, we need to be ready. Already on it, Lysara confirmed. I'll coordinate with Earth Command. I'll start analyzing the Aurora residue. One of the remaining scientists offered, there might be usable technology in the dimensional fold signature. As the crowd dispersed to their various tasks, Kaylin and Serenia found themselves alone on the observation deck. She leaned against him, suddenly looking exhausted. We did it, she said quietly. We actually did it. Unity, first contact, a new future. And a baby, Kaylin added. Don't forget the evolutionary leap growing inside you. She smiled, placing her hand over his on her abdomen. How could I forget? Every medical scan shows something new. Did you know our child has a third helix in their DNA? The geneticists are beside themselves with excitement. Our child is going to have a very weird childhood, Kaylin observed. First of their kind, raised by parents from different species, in a civilization that's making itself up as it goes along. Sounds perfect, and Serenia said, Normal is overrated anyway. A soft chime interrupted them. Elder Thexar appeared on the communication screen, his face still bearing the weight of his crimes, but somehow lighter than it had been months ago. Princess, Captain, he greeted them. I watched the first contact from my confinement. I wanted to say, thank you for showing mercy when you had every right to demand vengeance, for allowing me to witness the fruition of everything your father dreamed of. You've provided valuable testimony, Serenia replied carefully. Your cooperation has helped heal wounds that might have festered for generations. Still, I am grateful. I have a request, if I may be so bold. Speak. I wish to record my memories, all of them before my execution, the good and the bad, the choices and their consequences. Let my life serve as a warning about the cost of abandoning emotion in favor of the illusion of perfection. Serenia was quiet for a moment. Your execution has been commuted to life imprisonment. Elder, the Joint Council voted yesterday. You'll live to see what you helped destroy and what you helped, in your way, to create. The old Drunari's eyes widened, tears flowing freely. I I don't deserve such mercy." "No," Kaelin agreed bluntly. "You don't, but justice isn't about what people deserve. It's about what society needs. And we need your knowledge, your experience, and yes, your cautionary tale." "Your recording request is approved," Serenia added. "We'll ensure your story is heard by future generations." After Thexer signed off, they stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The aurora from the first speaker's departure was already fading, but its implications would resonate for generations. "What now?" Kaelin asked. "Now we build," Serenia replied. "Cities where human and Drunari live as neighbors. Schools where children learn both emotional expression and control. A military that protects all of us from whatever's out there watching." "And that pizza place you promised to try?" She laughed. "Yes, that too, though I maintain that mixing that many flavors is culinary chaos." "The best kind of chaos," Kaelin insisted. They were interrupted by Lysara returning, her expression urgent. "We have a situation. Long-range sensors are detecting something. Multiple vessels, origin unknown, heading toward our space." "How long?" Serenia asked, immediately shifting to command mode. 6 weeks at their current speed. They're not using any propulsion method we recognize." "The first speaker's warning," Kaelin said grimly. "Others are watching." "Then we better be ready to meet them." Serenia replied. She activated the station-wide communication system. "Attention all personnel. This is Princess Cathar. We've detected unknown vessels approaching our space. This is not a drill. All departments, initiate first contact protocols. We have 6 weeks to prepare." She turned to Kaelin. "So much for that peaceful future we were planning." "We'll have peace," he said confidently. "We'll just have to earn it first, together." "Together," she agreed, then smiled. "But we're still getting that pizza first. If we're facing potential alien invasion, I'm not doing it on an empty stomach." As they left the observation deck, the silver feather at Serenia's throat pulsed once. So briefly they might have imagined it, but across the station, in the quarters of those who would become the first speakers, dreams began. Dreams of distant stars, of civilizations struggling toward unity, of challenges and triumphs yet to come. The revolution was over. The integration was progressing. First contact had been achieved. But the real story, the story of what humanity and the Drunari would become together, was just beginning. And in a small restaurant on the station's commercial level, a human man and a Drunari woman sat sharing a pizza, laughing at the absurdity of their journey from that awkward first date to saving 2 civilizations. She still analyzed every topping, and he still made terrible jokes. But now those differences were treasures, not obstacles. "I love you," Serenia said suddenly, cheese stringing comically from her mouth. "I love you too," Kaelin replied, wiping sauce from her chin. "Even if you eat pizza like a scientist." "Especially because I eat pizza like a scientist," she corrected. Outside the restaurant's windows, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of the species that lived beneath them. But for 2 people who had found each other across impossible odds, who had literally rewritten the future of 2 civilizations with their love, those stars seemed to shine just a little brighter. The feather pulsed again, responding to their joy, their hope, their determination to face whatever came next. It had done its job, delivering its message, catalyzing unity. But its real purpose, the purpose its creator had truly intended, was simpler and more profound. It was a reminder that love, in all its chaotic, impossible, transformative glory, could overcome any division, heal any wound, and light the way to futures that no one species could imagine alone. And as Kaelin and Serenia finished their meal and prepared to face the unknown vessels approaching their space, they carried that truth with them. Whatever came next, they would face it together, human and Drunari, logic and emotion, past and future, united by a silver feather and a love that had already changed the galaxy. The ending was really just another beginning, and this time, they were ready for whatever it might bring.